STORMY production. Hey everybody, this is Dino with her podcast. Michelle's not able to be with me right now, but I do have a very special guest. You've heard me talk about his films all the time. We finally have him on, Mr. Larry Blamire. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Great. Is that my intro? You can say more about me if you want.
Well, you know more about you than I do.
I'm kidding. I kid. See, I'm seeking praise. I just wanted you to say all the wonderful things I do. But it's nice to talk to you, Dino.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me just start with my history with you. It was probably about 15 years ago, and I'm in a video in a movie gallery, and I'm looking around and looking at new releases, and I see a movie called The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra on the wall. And I read it, and I say, well, this sounds goofy as hell. So I pick it up and bring it home, and then I watch it. And then I realized that there's not one, but two audio commentaries on it. So I watch it a second time and then watch it a third time in one day.
And it is goofy as hell.
And yeah, I fell in love, and I got the joke right off the bat, and so I know people use, spoof or satire or whatever. I saw it as an ultimate love letter to, the 50s B movies.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's half that and half my love of the absurd. So it's kind of a collision of those two things that I love.
Yeah. So after that, I kind of contacted, I think I contacted your website, like the, what was that, Banham Street?
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
Yeah.
And then, boom, I got an email back from Dr. Paul Armstrong. So I said,
any chance to get his voice heard just can shut him up.
Yeah, so then went back to that video store and then ended up buying that copy. And then a few years later, I found out you had two other films that were being made available in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The Lost Skeleton Returns Again and Dark and Stormy Night.
Yes, they came out 10 years ago this year.
Oh, yeah. Great. So, yeah, I bought those and, really dug those, and then had the hardest time finding Child of Screaming Forehead, and ended up getting it on eBay. And fortunately, I had a Blu-ray player at the time, and I was able to play it here in the States.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
because go ahead.
Now we have a brand spanking new Blu-ray of it that is the world premiere of my original director's cut.
Right, yeah. Because I know that IFC had also played, I think it was a producer's cut of it for a little bit.
Yes, it ran on IFC for a while, the cut version, yes.
Yeah, and I had that on my DVR until that took a dive on me. But so, and then we had the we had met a couple of times over at the SC Comic Con in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes, yes.
Years ago, and I bought your play,
Bride of the Mutants Tomb.
Bride of the Mutants Tomb, right? And then also bought Jen's children's book.
Yes, Sticky May Gray, wonderful children's book, which, just to plug, that's available on lulu.com. It's a terrific book. And
right.
the play Bride of the Mutants Tomb, of course, had some of the elements in it that would later become part of Lost Skeleton Cadavra.
Right. And that was a play that you had performed, that you had written and put on, right?
I wrote it. Very talented fellow named Perry Barton directed it for the Open Door Theater. Brian Howe, our own Brian Howe of Stormy Night and Skeleton and everything else, and Big Dan Frater, was in that cast, and it featured the sort of the germ of the characters of Crowbar and Lattice. They were in that incarnation. They were a lot closer to their origins, which was Eros and Tana, the aliens from Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yes.
Of all the Lost Skeleton characters, those two are the most directly inspired, where I can sort of point to the inspiration. And it was definitely the aliens from Plan 9. But Bride of the Mutants Tomb was about a sort of an Ed Wood type director, pretty, loosely based on him. It's just about a guy with nothing trying to get his movie made, and kind of an underdog story. And I was very happy with it, and the audiences really enjoyed it. And so some things from there turned up in some of the things from there turned up in The Lost Skeleton.
So what made you want to take that story and expand it to a movie?
Well, you mean Bride of the Mutants Tomb?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really didn't. I didn't expand Bride to a movie.
Right.
It's really very different. I mean, when I started writing Lost Skeleton, I was trying to jam in everything, all kinds of different elements that seem sort of incongruous or disparate. You've got this vengeful, villainous skeleton that is sort of supernatural, but then you have the science fiction elements of the mutant and the aliens, and so you've got that kind of monster, and then you've got Anamala, which is the sort of cat women of the moon, femme fatale kind of thing, astounding she-monster or whatever. So all these things are, kind of it's sort of a melting pot. The things I took from Bride of the Mutants Tomb were the aliens and some of their dialogue, and the mutant, or the idea of a mutant. It's a very different, as the one that Courtney Skinner built for the movie is very different from the one that we built in Bride of the Mutants Tomb. But so there were certain elements from that. But really, Lost Skeleton sort of became its own animal.
Right. Now, here's something that I thought was pretty interesting. Your Lost Skeleton is, based toward the late 50s type era, like your mid-late 50s?
I had set out with the idea that it would be late 50s, which was an incredible time for, you look at all the stuff that Shout Factory and Kino Lorber are putting out now that is from that, and Universal, that is from that rich 50s period. It was quite a bonanza of films. Now, when we shot the movie, we couldn't get a 50s car. We got a early 60s car. So decided, okay, it's set in 1961, let's say, which was still a black and white era, really. In fact, The Day Mars Invaded the Earth was in 1964, and that's a black and white movie, one of the last of the black and white sci-fi movies. There were a few more, but that's why I kind of consider it early 60s.
Right. Now, even like your dialogue and your rhythm, the pacing of everything is, I mean, pretty spot on for that. When you write, I can't imagine that allows for many ad-libs.
No,
Just because
no, my actors talk about that where, it's sort of like, it's just, ad-libs are very rare. In Trail of the Screaming Forehead, Brian and Dan, that's Brian Howe and Dan Conroy, did some ad-libbing that was beautiful, and we left it in. But for the most part, it's hard to ad-lib in this territory because you're dealing with a certain kind of cadence, a certain kind of language that is a certain B-movie talk. And so, we don't really have too much in the way of ad-libbing.
Right. I mean, and especially in, like, if I may jump ahead a little bit, to Dark and Stormy Night, where everything is a very quick wit, 1940s, rhythm, type of thing.
We're looking at either late 30s, early 40s there. It was a whole different flavor, a different language,
Right.
which the actors, I thought, did a tremendous job of tackling that. If you look at the reporters played by Jennifer Blair and Dan Roebuck, that patter back and forth, they worked hard on that and they nailed it. And so that had to have that snappy kind of 1930s patter to it.
Right.
By the way, that just came out on, we just put a Blu-ray of that out, which ports over the commentary tracks or track from the DVD release, but we have some new extras on there too. Two of the reanimated movie classics that we've been doing, which are a lot of fun. The Girl and the Clock and Curse of the Drop Trials, which is another old Dark House thing. Dark and Stormy Night, I should mention, is a sort of love letter to the old Dark House movies.
Good evening.
Gee, the joint's haunted.
We're here for the reading of the Cavender will.
We are all gathered here this 10th of May, 1930.
10th of May? Say, isn't that the very night that Sinus Cavender swore he'd return from the grave and kill everybody?
Yes. It was on a night just like this. He swore that on this night, 30 years hence, he would return and do bad things. He said when the clock struck 13.
What time would that be, though?
What was that? Oh, what's happening now?
Yeah, and that is personally, I mean, I love all your films, but that one is, my personal favorite. And it's just so ridiculously quotable.
Thank you.
Like, let's leave this room of death and mounted heads. I mean, so
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I just getting to do an old Dark House movie was a dream come true. And by that time our stock company had grown, so we've got 20 plus actors, and at times they were in the same room. That was epic. I mean, it was quite an interesting thing to have that many actors. Well, first of all, how lucky am I to have such wonderful people to work with, to say your dialogue. I mean, that's a great thing right there. And we were able to have in Dark and Stormy such a large cast. It was important for me to, well, first of all, it's fun to write for people you know. You're writing for a specific voice.
Right.
But then to be able to include so many in that was just a real treat.
Yeah, and as I was going to say, that's another thing. When I grew up, I knew of like James Caan from Poltergeist, and of course I grew up in New York, so he was the Pathmark guy, and so to see him, and this was before I saw a trailer of Screaming Forehead, but to see him in your film, Jim Beaver.
Yeah.
I was a Supernatural fan, and also Harper's Island.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
to see him in there, growing up, watching Laverne and Shirley, Betty Garrett.
Betty,
and,
wonderful. Yep.
Yeah. So it was absolutely great to see everybody in there.
Marvin Kaplan is the
spirit. H.M. Winan.
What's that?
Like H.M. Winan.
Yes.
Also,
he's a great guy, and he's just so. All of these folks are so dedicated to having fun and doing a great job at the same time, and so we're really lucky to have such a happy set. Which is important when you're working on a film, I think. But,
right. And you did sort of answer this. So, and you do use a lot of your same friends and players going through. So when you're writing, I know you're writing specifically for the period, but are you also writing specifically for them?
Always. For instance, in Lost Skeleton Returns Again, and I'm not a big fan of sequels, but if you have an idea that makes it somewhat different, and there's some reason for it to exist rather than just being a repetition, then I found that to be worthwhile. And so I'm writing, for instance, with Brian Howe's character had met his end in the first movie, so I thought it'd be fun to bring him back as a twin, and of course even more absurd to bring back Dan Conroy as a twin of Ranger Brad. And so when writing those parts, I'm hearing their voices, and I'm hearing and Jen and Allison Martin and Faye Masterson, and I think it just makes it. I think it makes the writing that much easier when you can do that, when you can hear those voices.
Okay. Now with I know you've had some very successful Kickstarter campaigns for these discs.
We just had our third one with Dark and Stormy Night. The first one was Lost Skeleton Returns Again, and the second one was Trail of the Screaming Forehead. So yeah, we've done well with these, which is great. The fans have been great and supportive, and it's so nice to be able to see these remastered, which Bill Russell does a great job of.
Okay, now my question would be, would this possibly open up the door for another Kickstarter for possibly The Lost Skeleton Walks Among Us?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. Doing a Kickstarter for a Blu-ray release is one thing, but we did try some years ago to mount we had a Kickstarter for Lost Skeleton Walks Among Us, which would be the third and final film, but it just didn't make it. So right now, as it stands, we don't have any plans to try that again. But you never know. I mean, I haven't given up the idea of making it. There's a lot of possibilities. It could be even an animated project. I mean, who knows? So, but right now, there's nothing on the table.
Oh, okay, great. So You're telling me there's a chance then?
Well, just saying there's not a chance.
The double negative.
Turns
I
against
see what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So, are you? I mean, I know you're writing also, right? You're right. I mean, you've got books.
Oh, I just
and-
actually just before getting on this call with you, I got my mail, which doesn't sound too exciting, does it? Get mail, just a typical thing, right? Wrong. This was exciting mail because I got a proof copy of a book that I've been trying to get this out for a while, trying to find the time to get this book done. It's a book of my cartoons this is another thing I do because I started as a graphic artist. I still, I sketch cartoons. They started out as something for my own amusement and just a sort of a sort of therapeutic scribble kind of thing, But I finally, in the last couple of weeks, I found a window where I could get the book together, gather up the cartoons, and I just got a proof copy, and by golly, it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to give a quick once-over for typos. The printing looks great. It's a book, a collection of 200 of my cartoons, which the total is 200, so that's all of them. And it's called Johnny Russet, He Don't Like No Fried Food.
That rolls off the tongue.
There you go. And means absolutely nothing unless if you see the cover, it makes a little more sense. I try not to make too much sense with anything that I do. But anyway, that's going to be available actually for order online in the next couple of days. Like I said, I'm just going to go over the proof copy, and then I will post on Facebook and Twitter. I'll post a link to where folks can order it.
Oh, fantastic. Now, you're the Steam Wars, are you still doing that, or is that something that's been...
Well, Steam Wars has kind of been on the back burner for a while. I had a partnership with the company for a while, put out a graphic novel, 3 parts. But things kind of went south a bit on it, and I think it's in a sort of limbo state right now, but that doesn't mean it's not. That's a dream project of mine. It's a huge, huge project. It is a steampunk epic, which I created years ago, and it really is. It's not a lot of science fiction. It's more like a swashbuckling historical war adventure type thing in Victorian days. It's less fanciful than a lot of the steampunk, but it's something that I do want to get back to it. I'm constantly going from one project to the next, it seems like, and it's just a whirlwind sometimes. But I do want to get back to Steam Wars.
And were you doing art for like a game? Was it an RPG or a...
Yes, they came from beneath the sea. I did a lot of artwork for that, and it was a lot of fun. They commissioned me that was a couple of years ago. That was my first experience with RPG. I've never had any, I don't know much about RPG. I still don't. But I was writing for them, and more of a story guy than the technical aspects, of course, and doing a bunch of artwork. And it was a lot of fun because it was had a 50s monster movie feel to it. So it was a nice palette to work on there. And that is available right now. They came from beneath the sea.
Oh, okay. And then as well as your films, your spoof films and stuff, you also wrote a straight up horror film a few years ago.
I co-wrote with my buddy Kyle Rankin, The Witch Files. It was a lot of fun because it was so different from any of the other stuff that I've been doing. And also it was fun because working with Kyle was fun. And honestly, I have never collaborated before as a writer, and I was not too sure how that would go, but it went really well. It was actually very smooth. And Kyle directed it. I thought the results were quite nice, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
All right. And Larry, on social media, I know you post a lot of your brain droppings, if you will, but also a lot of things that your son says and does and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a variety of things. I do that, some of those, and I also do a lot of sort of, I'm a real nut for classic television and for movies of almost all kinds of movies. Mm-hmm. So I can't get enough of them, and a lot of times I will share sort of, mini reviews of this or that movie. I love finding stuff that's obscure. And this is not just sci-fi and horror. This is pretty much all genres except probably musicals. I'm not really a musical fan. But I've been just, it's a great time for a movie fan right now. I mentioned earlier Shout and Kino Lorber. I'll add Olive Films and Arrow, and there's some other labels that escape me that are really putting out a lot of wonderful Blu-rays of things that need to be out there and things that we've never heard of too. So it's a great time to be a movie fan, I think. And I also I have the complete Gunsmoke DVD collection. That's 20 seasons, which is, wow. I'm a big Western fan. So I've always found Gunsmoke to be just a fine piece of work and an amazing, but it had stretched for 20 years and had just a great quality over the years. And so I'm going through those like a kid in a candy store, and that's really fun. So yeah. So yes, I do. I like to post a lot of this stuff.
Now, with your son, he seems to have this amazing imagination and creative, and has an appreciation of movies and older type of stuff as well.
Yeah, he started doing some stop motion animation, which is really neat.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Now, what is he like? Because I've got 3 young kids, 12, 9, and 7. And I'm always trying to give them an appreciation for Harryhausen and, some of the old stuff and old cartoons and all that type of thing. What are some of his favorites?
Well, let's see. He, the other day he asked for some Popeye. He loves the old Fleischer Popeye cartoons, which Warner Brothers has put all of them out, which is great. So he's definitely a fan of those. He also, and actually, I enjoy watching with him the Scooby-Doo movies, which are made for TV, or I should say not made for TV, really, direct to video, let's call them, that they have done for the last, I think they started them in the 90s, and they still make them, and they're really well made. Mm-hmm. And he gets a kick out of them, and I enjoy them too. They have. I'm amazed at the credit sequences. They have credits, the title sequence. They give it a lot of care, kind of like something that would make Saul Bass smile. Really, really, a lot of design work goes into it, and we've been enjoying them. He also went through. We went through the Three Stooges, which Griffin really appreciated. Although once we got towards the end of the Shemp stuff, he wasn't too keen to go on after that. Really, Curly was his favorite. But yeah, he likes a lot of the older stuff. It's great.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. Great. Now, with your movies, the new Blu-rays, where can people get a hold of those?
Oh, well, if you Google hydraulic entertainment, Dark and Stormy Night, that will take you to the Blu-ray there, or Hydraulic Entertainment, Trail of the Screaming Forehead, Hydraulic Entertainment, Lost Skeleton Returns Again, or any combination of those words should work, and you can get both regular copies of the Blu-rays or signed copies.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Is there anything that you would like to mention that hasn't been mentioned yet?
Well, I will mention the one thing I'm working on right now, besides getting this book out, which is pretty much done now. I can tell you that I'm working on a project, but I can't tell you what it is. So, so how's that for tease? All I can say is there is something. We do have something coming, and I think fans will be into it. And I can't say what it is yet. So we're not quite ready to announce it, but it's fun, and that's soon.
But there's a thing of stirring, is what you're saying. So.
Yep, it's stirring.
Great, love it, love it. All right, Larry, I want to thank you again for coming on.
Well, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it, and you know what we say, guys: be decent to each other. Peace. Gary Ollie Production.